I've played a lot of games, I suppose, whether it be old or new, but something got me thinking. Are graphics or gameplay more important? Obviously, the answer is gameplay. I mean, I'm playing a fucking game. Well, that's your answer. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. But for real, my real question is if the graphics can impede on the gameplay. And when they do, is it really that big of a deal? Pokemon is an easy one to make fun for its shitty graphics. I've made a video already talking about it, but the Pokemon gameplay isn't bad at all. It's actually insanely fun. But the frame dips, character pop-ins, water, and terrible shading overall ruin the game. If it's consistently in front of the player, I feel it is rather jarring. Also, when I say graphics, I don't mean aesthetics. We will cover the difference a bit later on. So, what makes up graphics? Well, if we're really simplifying it, I guess we could just say frame rate and resolution. I'm going to be talking heavily about Nintendo games mainly, because they are the ones with the shitty graphics. Take Link's Awakening, for example. The game's fine, but every time I want to switch screens, the frame rate dips from 60 to 30. If this was a one-off thing, that's fine, but it happens every time you switch in the outer world. I believe in this instance it actually ruins the gameplay and slows down the pace of the game. Another game is Trials of Mana on the Switch. It is 30 FPS and 900p. I think when you play a game on a 1080p monitor that is 900p, it looks complete dog shit. They have done this with other games like The Witcher 3, which in that game's case is understandable considering it's The Witcher 3. I mean, it just looks like a pixelated mess and heavily ruins the immersion. Especially cutscenes, as you might as well play the game on another console. In the case of Trials of Mana, the resolution is insanely important, considering it is an action JRPG with a lot of story. So the 30 FPS for Trials of Mana makes sense, although it is a little bizarre when compared to other games like Mario Odyssey, which is a smooth 60 FPS and 1080p. I think it is less to do with the power of the Switch and more to do with the developers of the game, although the Switch is severely underpowered. Okay, I'll put it like this. So graphics and gameplay both work together to overcome the communication barrier between the player and the game. So that way the player understands what's going on. When you have a shitty frame rate or resolution, it makes that communication barrier harder. Say I hit an enemy in Breath of the Wild. It will look like this, and the player can easily understand what's happening, that being me hitting an enemy. Unlike Age of Calamity. Ew. Oh man, that's horrible. Same thing can be said with resolution and textures. Aesthetics are more to do with the style of a game. If you look at something like Call of Duty, it is a very realistic sort of aesthetic, while something like Dragon Quest is more unrealistic. I think the graphics depends on two things, the aesthetics and the game's purpose. Then we can really determine whether or not the graphics do a good job at enhancing those aspects. I could rattle off as many examples as I like, but at the end of the day, it depends on the game. Each one is different. Through my previous examples, I hope you understand that. We've covered that graphics can definitely impede on the gameplay depending if the graphics ruin gameplay and make it harder for the player to understand, and if the graphics defy what the game's purpose and aesthetics are. If we look back at Link's Awakening, we can see it's a top-down action-adventure game, meaning it should be smooth and quickly responsive for the player. However, the frame dips ruin that aspect of the game's purpose. The aesthetic is simple and minimalistic, which should make it easier to run, should it not? Making the clips and the dips more jarring, in my opinion, from a consumer standpoint. This is all cool, but the other half of the question, does it matter? The simple answer is no. This is because games are meant to be played, not watched. Unless the graphics ruin the timing of the controls or crash the game, I really don't think it's the hugest deal. If a game relies so heavily on the graphics, such as a story game, then yes, it would make a difference. Say something like a Telltale game. Like I said, it really depends on the purpose and the aesthetics of the game. Well, that's enough of me talking out of my ass for today. It certainly is an interesting topic. I would love to hear your 2 cents down below, so let's get a discussion going. And if you're new here, maybe consider subscribing. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.